Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My guest today is a lady named Debz Shakti, and she's going to correct me because if I say it wrong. But she is a professional quantum hypnotherapist, along with many other things. Watch this introduction. Debz Shakti is a professional quantum hypnotherapist and open channel offering other professional PSI services, including Energy Alchemy, ET, contact, and paranormal experience counseling. She is the associate producer of the new top-rated film Alien Abduction Answers. Her work as the quantum hypnotherapist assisting John Yost, the filmmaker, as well as with all the experiencers in the film, is highly featured. She has many decades of professional service working with such people and many others, seeking self-discovery and clarity about the nature of consciousness. She works with all types of energy healing modalities and is a lifelong yogi and yoga, breathwork, meditation, mantra teacher. She also spent much of her life as a competitive sports athlete and is a former national champion martial artist, published author, and much more. Debz loves everyone, our planet, and everything that makes up life. And welcome, Debz. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, thank you, Jim. I'm so honored and very grateful to be here. What a great introduction. Wow.
Well, thank you. I love putting those together because it really gives me a chance to get to know my guest.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got some great pictures there, and you've had a lifetime of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I can't wait to get into this conversation. What I really want to know, what is quantum consciousness? Also known as, I'm looking at these notes that I have, also known as non-local consciousness.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Well, ask 100 people that question, and they're going to give you 100 different answers. Or you could rephrase it and say, what is your idea of what holds everything together in the universe? What's the thing? Some people call it God, some people call it cosmic mind, some people call it source, some people call it infinite data. It's life. But what's great about non-local, or what we call quantum consciousness, is that it exists everywhere, forever, all at once in the same place. Infinitely. Infinite versions of everything. Infinite, how do I want to say it? Infinite experiences in infinite iterations. And you're in every one of them, at least from what I have seen. And you're playing all the parts, but you think all these other people, all these other things all around you, that they're separate from you, but they're not. So quantum consciousness, basically for me, is the gigantic library of all that is. Okay.
Is that sort of like the Akashic record?
It's exactly what the Akashic record is.
Exactly what that is.
Yep.
Yes. And can you give me some more examples of what all this is?
Sure. I mean, you can go at it so many ways. Religious people will say, there's a deity or deities that kind of hold creation together and make the rules and create the experiences for everybody. Spiritual people go one further and say, everything is, held together by something, but many of us don't know what it is. So we call it by different names, but we all participate in it. And there really aren't as many, rules out there as one would think. We as humans tend to, quantify and qualify with rules and labels, but really it's all about it's all us. It's just all you, basically. And all the reflections of you. So I like to tell people, my one of my little visions of this is that all of creation is in you, and you are this gigantic, infinitely faceted jewel. And each facet on that jewel is a different form of you. It's a different personality. It's a different version of you. What some people might call, parallel lives or past and future lives. But they're all you. And all the people around you are also you. They're just different facets of that jewel. And each facet that you perceive life through, as you're looking into it, you see the same, you see creation, but you're looking at it from a different point of perspective. And that's why people don't agree on what they're looking at, or they even think that there's just vast differences between them and the other facets, if you will. But it's all a part of the same jewel, and it's all part of you. And it all informs itself. You might look at it again as the yogis look at it. They called it Indra's web. It's a gigantic spider web of information, a network, and at every intersection there's a jewel, and that jewel is a holographic bit of data, and so it's all connected. So when people ask me, well, how do you feel about these people over here or this idea over here? I just say, it's all part of me. I can't hate on it. I can't, I don't have to agree with everything, but I can't hate it. I can't shove it away. It's something that I need to look at. If it's something I don't agree with, I have to find out within myself what is the contrast that I'm looking at. But it's still all me. And when you're looking at it, it's all still you. I don't know if that helped.
No, that really helped. It's just kind of hard wrapping your head around this, because I've dealt with folks that have had near-death experiences, and people have had out-of-body experiences, and they say that, I think you and I may have talked about this before, where time is not linear.
Oh.
That's really hard to put together in your head, especially when all you know is this reality.
Yeah.
Every day you look at the clock, you go to work, you get up in the morning, it's time for coffee, it's time to go to work, time to come home, it's time to go to bed. We live by linear time.
Yeah. In this dimension, in this facet.
In this facet.
Yeah.
And with all of these different expressions of what you're saying, all these different things, all happening at the same time.
Yeah. And they're all happening in the same place forever.
That's quantum.
It's quantum. And so that's why when I was like a young adult, I've always been a big science freak anyway, and a big spiritual freak, but science was kind of my jam. When I started learning about quantum physics, it kind of started helping me understand some of this stuff. And by no means can I, go toe to toe with some of my astrophysics and quantum physics friends. They're just so much more intelligent than I. But I do have a layperson's good understanding of it. I think I've got a good grasp of it. And basically what it explains to me is that everything is connected, and everything is informing everything else depending on your vibrational state, or what we as humans would call our feeling state, our emotional state. So, if you're feeling very carefree and happy and positive during the day, and you go into a meeting in a conference room with, some of the people you work with, and they've just had a fight, all of a sudden you start to feel your energy come down, because it's like a magnetic field, right? It's pulling you in, and your energy changes, ergo your vibrational state changes, and the reality around you starts to change to match that vibrational state. So that's kind of some of the work that I do with people, is getting them to understand that you have a choice, and it does take some work, but linear time does not really exist, nor does, I don't even know if the physical world really exists. I think that we're living in a holographic representation of kind of a science lab that we built for ourselves to have some cool experiences. But so that's a whole other concept.
That's a good thought, because I've thought that myself. Now,
Mhm.
let me ask you, the human experience, okay?
Mhm.
The way we report things and we talk about things and the
Mm.
experiences we have, and you think about, I watch Ancient Aliens all the time
Oh,
now.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm kind of big into that.
Awesome show.
I have a lot of questions. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm not completely this side or that side, but I've just got a lot of questions.
Mhm.
Now, the whole idea of this quantum consciousness stuff is, do you think that our ancient ancestors had any concept of this? And if it did, do you think that it affected the way they lived their lives at all? Or
Yeah,
if I'm
I,
making myself,
you're making yourself very clear, and I absolutely think I say yes. But it depends on which part of the ancient you're looking at, because I believe that again, let's start from the beginning. Quantum physics tells us that all things are made of energy, and they're all made of the same energy. They come from a same energy, from a source energy, and it can diversify itself, but it's still the same energy. Energy can never die. It can only change form and function by virtue of its vibrational state, or if you want a different way to say it, by virtue of how fast it's vibrating or oscillating, and that creates frequency. So that's like, when I say I'm in a really high frequency today, it means that my emotional state is vibrating higher than somebody who might be really depressed. But that affects the physical. That's energetic, that's mental, that's emotional, but it literally affects your physical being, or this thing I call my spacesuit, this body. It affects the cellular material. And so that's why some people uh, even feel or look or act sluggish, or, their bodies often match their vibrational state. So energy never dies, it just changes form and function. And here's the other cool thing: because it never dies, it's all still in existence, but the only stuff that we can perceive is what we are looking at within a vibrational or frequency range. Just like, this might make more sense, human beings can only see a tiny portion of a huge spectrum of visible light. But what we see is this much. It doesn't mean all these other frequencies of light don't exist, it just means our apparatus can't perceive it. But as we change, as we grow, as we evolve, we are starting to see and feel and understand and perceive other things. I believe that because all forms of being, all the infinite forms of being have always existed, they continuously exist. Um, you know, what we're calling our ancient ancestors, some of them actually did. They were masters of this, and probably much more. But because they're on such a high vibrational frequency state, most of us don't perceive them. And the vestiges of their civilizations don't show up in our very slow moving, third dimensional, dense, dualistic uh, physical state here. We'd have some, I believe, like the pyramid structures, the great mammoth monuments, the all of the different languages, alchemy, things like that. Those are vestiges of those civilizations, but doesn't mean they went anywhere. It just means we can't perceive them in the vibrational state that we are.
And, I've often thought about this. When you really give this some thought, we live in a very narrow band
Yes, we do.
of existence.
Mm-hmm.
We can only see from here to here.
Yeah.
We can only hear
Yes.
from here to here.
Mm-hmm.
We can only smell certain things.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the animals that we live with, their senses are better in some
Mm-hmm.
cases, and their senses aren't quite as good
Mm-hmm.
in others. All matter vibrates.
Yeah.
It's all frequency based. So we live in this little sort of a narrow band of physics.
Yep. That's
and
right.
If you give that, I've given that some thought for years, and I love the fact that there are people like you that have spent years studying
Mm-hmm.
and looking at this from a broader perspective. Do you suppose, has any of this, I think about when I go back and think about petroglyphs.
Oh,
and
yes.
what those people put
Mm-hmm.
on those rocks.
Yeah.
What were they seeing? I mean, their vision of reality. We have such a hard time figuring out what all those funny characters are in the petroglyphs.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
They saw something we didn't see.
We could do 10 shows just on that because I love that subject.
Yeah,
but what I believe and what I've been told, when I go in with a client, when we go into quantum hypnosis, often they'll go back into those lifetimes and they'll give lots of information about what happened there. And I take everybody at face value when we do that because they're just breaking into that record and pulling pieces out. But as far as the petroglyphs, for instance, down in the southwest of the United States, for instance, or the cave drawings down in South America, what those people were painting were what they perceived, what they were able to perceive, which I believe were other civilizations or maybe a different part of their civilization. Why could they see that? And maybe they were still not very sophisticated. For instance, maybe they were still living in the jungle and they were hunter-gatherers or whatever. Why were those people able to perceive what we might think of as star beings or, UFOs or, people coming up out of the ocean? The things that they drew and painted, why were they able to see them and we often can't now in our culture? A lot of people say, well, I've never seen that, that's just made up. Well, I believe it's because they were unencumbered and their vibrational state was very high, but their intellectual state was not as technical as ours is now. And sometimes we can get in our own way with our intellect, right? It just because they couldn't explain what they were seeing and thereby painting or drawing doesn't mean they didn't experience those other beings. I believe they actually did encounter, maybe beings from other civilizations, other planets, other dimensions, and they painted them because they wanted to tell everybody about it. They wanted to tell their grandchildren about it. And it was something to do. But could they explain it? Only through the information that they already had in their data banks. So if you look at those things and they drew those pictures the way they drew them, kind of rudimentary pictures of space beings and space vehicles, if you will. And then later on, as you go into early European times, medieval times, people started having lore about, fairies and elves and witches. And, in the Asian cultures, they had dragon beings and all kinds of wraiths and things like that. I think they're just describing other layers of reality, other beings from other layers of reality, but they were still at a vibrational state where they could perceive them. They just couldn't explain them in the way that we would have light for them to.
It's almost and this is an old example, is when you might say, if I presented this to someone 1,000 years ago, if I had the ability to do that, this would be nothing but pure magic.
You'd be a god.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that goes without saying.
1,000 years ago, they would have carved your picture and that thing into, their monuments.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And, even today in our modern world, like you said, we still get in our own way.
Oh, yeah.
We are still so indoctrinated and limited in our scope of understanding.
Yeah.
And thankfully, that's changing.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the next point that I want to talk to you about. And we talked with John Yost last week. Debz.
My buddy.
Give us just a brief introduction in your words about this film.
Oh, wow. Well, the film's title is Alien Abduction Answers. And it is a film about, it kind of surrounds John's life tale. He had a kind of a traumatic experience, if you will, when he was 7 years old, and it affected him the rest of his life. And he hid it, and you're told why in the movie, but I don't want to give it all away. But he hid it and lied about it for about 40 years until, when you lie about something so much, it always bounces back. It's like pressing down a spring. And you know what happens when you press a spring down? Eventually it has enough inertia, it just, explodes out. He had another experience a few years ago that caused the spring to explode out, where he just couldn't hide from it anymore, and he just couldn't lie about it anymore. And by hook or crook, by the way that the spirit works in all of us and drives us to do things and grow and learn and be more productive, we were brought together for something else. And we got to know each other, and I offered to help him with this. I could see something was going on, and I got messages from my guides, which are also star people. They're called the star teachers, and they just kept saying, you need to offer to help work with him with some quantum hypnosis. And so, long story short, he eventually said, okay. And we started slow with some really quick, easy things. And, about a year and a half later, he finally did go in and look at that. But he had decided by then that this work was really important. And it was important to more than him. It was important to the world, because he started realizing there are hundreds of thousands, probably millions, maybe even billions of people on the earth who feel the same way that he did. And they need to know that they're not crazy, and that they're not alone, and that they have they have many forums where they can, get out and interact with others and make it more an accepted thing. It's part of our culture, but it's like this under the rug part of our culture that nobody wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. So anyway, the film talks about his situation, and by the time he decided to do what he called the big one, the big session, the real quantum hypnosis session, to look at it, he had already decided he wanted to help the world with it. And so he asked permission to film it. And I had to really give it some thought, because I have never allowed another person in the room when I do these sessions, and I've been doing them most of my life. I've never, I record them, but I've never had anybody filming it. So he and his crew went the extra mile. They did everything remotely. They set everything up. It was so respectful. And when we finally got in there, and I usually don't do this with people, I don't take them that long, but it took about 6.5 hours. We got it all on film, and it was monumental, the information that came through. absolutely incredible. Really, what happened was that little thing that happened to him that seemed so monumental when he was a kid was just, I call it a post-it note or a bookmark experience to get him, when the timing was right, to take action. And his action was to have the session and then actually see it for what it was, and then get all this other information about what is going on. And so we recorded it all, and it was very life altering. It was really amazing. And then he realized, well, maybe we should get other people's stories in here too, because we want to appeal to the everyday person. We want the everyday person to know they're not crazy and that they're important. And so I surveyed a lot of my clients, and we came up with some really good client stories. And so they're in there as well. And then we wanted a counterpoint, or really not a counterpoint, but kind of a buffer, because this stuff is so emotional. So it's just so much. And so we were so honored to get the great Whitley Strieber to be part of this movie, to kind of be our expert and to kind of tie things together between all of these situations. So it's a movie that's really close to my heart. It explains very well what we're trying to get our point across to the world, is that this has always been happening. It's happening. I think it happens to everyone. I think we all participate in it. I think it's voluntarily, by the way, even though it doesn't feel that way for a lot of people until they look at it through, say, a hypnosis session or something like that. But we just want to normalize it. And then, of course, he's very ambitious. He has 2 other films that he wants to put, dovetail to this one that pushes it more out there. What do you do with it once you realize it's real? And then how do we make the world better once we all come to that conclusion?
I guess my question is, this stuff isn't new.
Nope. Been going on forever.
Human beings have dealt with this forever. It's just that we are starting to understand in our modern society. Maybe we got on our, well, how'd you say that we got in our own way?
Oh, yeah.
For millennia, for thousands of years, we maybe got in our own way. But none of this is new.
Yeah.
And I guess my curiosity says, because I know John, okay, and you knew John before, and then you knew John afterwards. You used your knowledge to help him. This quantum consciousness you used to assist him in his experience and trying to understand all about John's journey.
Yeah.
What was the difference? And you have had other clients that have gone from here to here?
Thousands. Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible.
And the change in John was unique, correct? I mean, or it was profound, right?
It was profound, not unique, profound. It's always profound. Different degrees. It depends on how devoted the person is to their own inner work, and where they are in their own timing mechanism as to how much they do. As I said, he's a very ambitious person, and when he takes hold of something, he never lets go. He's a very committed person. He's a very spiritual person. He's a very pragmatic person. He's a highly intelligent. He's one of the most intelligent people I know. But his was just so profound because, well, I hate to make it sound so woo-woo, but I believe it was his destiny to do this. This is the time. And the beings that I channel, they're constantly saying this. And everyone in the quantum hypnosis sessions, no matter what they come from, they might even come to me to help lose weight or to understand why they have terrible relationships. But it always comes back to this deeper knowledge about the soul and why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. And it doesn't matter what facet you come at that jewel from, the answer is always in the center, which means you have to go within. You have to do that inner work. And a lot of people just don't feel like it's worth it or that it's real. You know, we're so indoctrinated to believe in just this tiny little third dimensional aspect of our reality. And unless you can measure it and quantify it by third dimensional scientific method, you know, and I know a lot of really brilliant people who believe this, then it's not real. But the third dimension and what exists in it and the methodology that we use to measure and explain what exists in that little speck of reality is only a speck. We are just scratching the surface of this knowledge. And so I believe that, you know, a lot of ancient traditions had a better grasp on it than we do now. We're just starting to remember it. It's starting to come back up. And that's why a lot of people are starting to have what you call these past life memories or these deja vus or these inspirations that just come out of the blue, and then they go look it up in the library and there it is, you know. It's all starting to come back. So why is that? Because they are in a what we call a resonant frequency with that data. Data is just data and it exists forever. But unless you're putting the right search words into the engine, the search engine, you're not going to get any new information. Now we're starting to question everything. And when we do, we've got extra methods of searching. And that's part of the work I do too. I teach people how to raise their vibrational state, how to engage their pineal gland, which is, I call it the cosmic satellite dish or radio transceiver. That's really what it is. So that you can access that easily. It's, you know, your brain, this is the spacesuit. Your brain is the operating system for the spacesuit. Your mind and what little information you contain in your conscious awareness is the software that runs it and kind of keeps it going and, you know, not bumping into things and not causing a lot of havoc here and there. But really, the real you is the cloud. And all that information is in the cloud. You can access it, but you have to know how to access it.
You have to know how. Let me ask you, and this question came from Patricia. She says, why do we
Mm-hmm.
have such a hard time? Why do we think it's not real? I mean,
well, because we were from birth in this place programmed to not believe it's real. Because if we really truly get in touch with who we are and what we are, which is infinite and unlimited beings, then nobody could control us, could they? But yet we live in a culture where we're constantly being told we're not good enough. You know, you weigh too much, so you need this product. Your hair isn't the right color, so you need this product. You know, nobody's going to want to date you if you wear the wrong clothes, and on and on and on. You can't get a good job unless you go to this college and get this education. And it's all a lie. But the lie exists to keep just a tiny little portion of people who want to control it all in power. That's ending pretty soon. People are starting to question everything. And I love it because, yeah, and that's going to cause pandemonium for a while when people start to realize, wow, do I really need to do what they're telling me to do on these advertisements? Do I really need to have a government controlling so much of what I'm doing and how I raise my children? So we're starting, I think it's always been a kind of a question that's been underneath, in the undercarriage of our psyches. But I think it really started in our generation. I remember growing up in the hippie years. What was our mantra? Question authority.
Yes,
You
you
remember
question
that?
everything.
Question everything. And so I grew up like that. In fact, my first word was why, if you can imagine.
I
My
remember,
poor parents.
Debs, I remember one of the things. It was always doctor knows best.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not to subtract or to take away anything
Oh, no.
about the professional world.
Yeah.
But there was a time, especially in our parents' and grandparents' time,
Mm-hmm.
you did not question
No.
authority. You did not question people of higher education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Today, that's really changing.
You're starting to see the whole hierarchy modality crumble. And as that crumbles, all the other constructs that no longer work well that were supporting that hierarchy or that modality are crumbling, which now that can be scary for people, because what does that tell you? It bespeaks personal responsibility. No longer is, if all this falls apart, and I believe it's falling apart really rapidly now, but if it all falls apart, well, who's gonna, take care of your highway for you? Who's going to who's going to, govern the rules that keep society from going mad? Well, it might go mad for a little bit, and that's okay. But what it's going to do is going to force us to start to appreciate each other and all of our unique talents and gifts, rather than saying, oh, that guy over there is so weird. He's so different than I don't want to have anything to do with him. It's going to cause us to look at that person and say, wow, if I put my talent together and his talent together and her talent together, we might build a whole new system, that is more equitable, that's more harmonious, that's actually peaceful. And when that happens, and they say it does, or these beings I'm talking to that come through, they say we do it. And when we do that, our whole civilization moves up a notch or several notches. And then we become part of the cosmic community, which they say most of creation lives that way. This is a very kind of sequestered little experimental lab, basically. And we have pretty much squeezed the blood out of this radish. So we're ready to leave. And that's why we're so annoyed with it.
So in all of your time that you have spent researching and investigating and dealing with people in the quantum consciousness, do you see what would be the percentage of people that are changing, in your opinion? I guess that's the best way to put it.
100%.
You see that?
I see 100%. Now, are they all changing at the same rate and in the same way that I am? Absolutely not, because we're all very unique. Remember, we're different, unique facets of that jewel. So I do get a lot of people who come to me, they get very depressed or they're very upset with the way the world is. And they're like, I just feel like it's just all going to hell in a handbasket. And what can I do? I feel hopeless and helpless. And I say, everybody's changing. Everybody's walking on the same path, going to the same destination, but they're walking at their own pace, and they're carrying the experiences or the tools, if you will, the resources of their past experiences and their past indoctrinations in their backpack. And so, I'm a pretty fast walker when I've got healthy legs. Some people can't keep up with me, and it's annoying that I'm going too fast and I might be missing all the stuff on the side of the path that they're stopping and looking at. And some people go really, really slowly because they're just learning how to use their legs, right? So it doesn't matter. What matters is if you can zoom out, and a person can do this in meditation or in other, practices that get you into a deep theta brainwave state, which is what we do when we go into quantum hypnosis, by the way. When you can get into that, we call it the flow state. Get into the flow state, you actually can zoom out and see, oh my gosh, all of these different perspectives and all of these different paces and ways of doing things, they all actually fit together perfectly for the whole, the way the whole is moving. But we can't see it because we're like a little ant walking on a tapestry that is 100 miles high and 100 miles wide. And it's just walking up and down these hills, which are just the threads of the tapestry. It has no idea that it's even on a tapestry. But if I would pick that ant up and walk away from that tapestry as far enough, it would see where it had been, and it would go, oh, its whole experience would be different, right?
Exactly. Now, one of the things that I do on this show is we talk about consciousness, human consciousness, science, the UFO world, and spirituality. Spirituality, human spirituality. Mm-hmm. Do you see, and I don't want to get overly philosophical here, but do you see religion changing any of this? And maybe that's a hard question.
Do I see religion changing it, or do I see religion changing because of it?
Good question.
I see, for eons, I've seen religion change it because the truth is still the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe at the heart of most religions, they started as kind of a guidebook for people to carry on the path. You know, it's like a map. You know, if you do this, then you can get here faster or better or easier or more harmoniously. But, you know, when human beings get involved with stuff, they start organizing and then they just screw it all up and it becomes a big jumble. So eventually the map turns into, you know, a really, you know, dark comic or something. But so have religions affected it? Absolutely, they have.
Yeah.
Is what is happening now, this giant wave of accelerated change affecting religions? It absolutely is. There's a lot of pushback. But even since I was a child, I've seen religions changing. And they have to, or they become unviable. You know?
I absolutely agree with that answer, by the way. I see a lot of people who are who believe in a source, in a God, mm-hmm. In a higher power, whether they be Christian or non-Christian or whatever. Okay?
Yeah.
The fact that there is a much, much higher place for the human heart to dwell.
Yes.
And there are examples of that if we just look that direction. Let me ask you this. And I also we also have a little trailer from the Alien Abduction Answers photograph or
movie.
I think you sent that. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we run that, and we're coming up. This hour goes by so quick.
I know.
But in your opinion, how can we best learn to tune our inner antennas into all of this?
Well, there are many ways. There are probably infinite ways. But I teach some of the ways that I know best, that work best for me. And that's how I get people. That's why I call my process quantum hypnosis, because it puts some of those methods. I give people homework before they have their session, and they have to do some practices. And most of them are ancient yogic practices, which I've been told predate humans. So they go before yoga. But they are ways to get into that flow state, that theta state, that brainwave state, and to achieve a clarity in the pineal gland so that it can access, transmit, and receive that information from the cloud, okay, from the all that is. Breath work is very important to the work that I do. I find it's kind of a quick method to get people in. Sound technology. Okay, go ahead.
And I didn't want to ruin your train of thought.
No, it's okay.
But you said breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that when I was reading your bio.
Yeah.
Am I going to push you off guard here?
Nope. You can't push me off guard.
What is breath work?
Breath work is what the yogis in Sanskrit call pranayama. It's different methods of breathing that achieve different brainwave states and can literally change the way your body's endocrine system releases and what it releases in its endocrine system, i.e., the hormonal system. The chemical cocktails that your brain and your glands excrete that cause your physical body to act and live a certain way, which actually then informs your reality, which causes your reality to start to build a different way, starts with the breath. The breath is, for me, the bridge between the physical realm, the body, and the soul, or cosmic mind, or source, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are infinite kinds of breath work out there. I'm sure you've heard of. Have you heard of the guy Wim Hof? You know who Wim Hof is? They call him the Iceman.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He does cold plunges and stuff his whole life, and he does all this breath work and everything. And he's superhuman. He really is. He's superhuman. He's been tested. He can do all kinds of things. Well, that's what this stuff can do. Well, it's simple. What I have people do is simple. It's like a 10-minute practice, doing a couple of different kinds of breathing to get into what psychologists might call a pattern interrupt, or a neurohacker would call a pattern interrupt. You know, if you're in a hyper stressed out state and all you see is your reality and it just keeps dumping on you and everything, if you do a certain kind of breath work for even a few minutes, you can snap yourself right out of that and be in a happier, healthier, more balanced state within a minute or two, sometimes seconds. Conversely, if you're in a really, like, I get a lot of people say, oh, I can't meditate. I can't even concentrate. You know, the world is just too full of stimulus. I can't be hypnotized, which, by the way, that's completely untrue. Everyone can be, because you hypnotize yourself hundreds of times a day. Whole other conversation. But there are types of breath work that can snap you into a different brainwave state. And then if you add some simple sound technology using the voice to make a certain sound for just a few moments with the breath, and you set your intention to relax and go within and expand your consciousness, you're in. It's really simple. And that's really the work that I do. I literally get people to relax enough and open up enough so that they can access the Great Hall of Records.
So that only stands a reason why when we meditate, we concentrate on our breathing.
Yes. Yes. And we do that so that we can meditate more deeply. Meditation is just accessing the record. That's all it is. The quantum field. That's what meditation is.
Well, that's perfect. I have so many things to talk about with you, and we're down to about three or 4 minutes here.
I know.
So we've already talked about some of the benefits of the whole quantum consciousness thing. Mm-hmm. And I guess I still have the question of, what is quantum hypnosis? We know quantum consciousness.
Yeah.
But you talk about quantum hypnosis.
Mm-hmm. Quantum hypnosis. Yes. Yes. I was trained clinically a bazillion years ago. So I have all of that education and I have all of that practicing. Adding in the piece that I just told you, what I called quantum consciousness practice, doing a little bit of breath work, a little bit of sound technology, what the yogis call mantra, and then allowing yourself to relax and go into a meditative state, a flow state, where you lose track of time, your body, and your environment. When you do that, then it's very easy for me to give you a little guided journey, get you relaxed, and start asking you questions. And literally all I do is I usually just tell people, now we're going to go to the most appropriate time and place or scene or lifetime or experience that relates to what you came here for, what you want to get answers about or healing for or whatever. And instantly they're there, and they're like a reporter. They're like my star reporter, and I send them out on a newscast, and they're calling in the news to me, and they're just observing themselves in these lives. But because they're in the quantum field, they're not just looking at it from a third dimensional lifetime. They might be an interdimensional being. They might be a light beam. They might be a frog. It doesn't matter. They're able to talk about what's going on from that vantage point, from all vantage points, because everything's connected in the quantum field. So once they're in there, they can literally give any information I ask for about anything. And they do. And their consciousness, I call it their higher self, guides them in the journey to report the most important things. And then at the end of the session, that higher self comes in and ties it all together and explains why they saw what they saw, how it's going to help, and what to do about it.
That's great. We're out of time, Debz.
I know.
I wanted to run that little trailer. I don't think we have time. I'm limited.
I know.
But I do want to talk about all these therapeutic modalities and the self-healing things that you teach and you talk about. And so, just like so many of my guests, I want to have you back.
Oh, awesome.
Let's talk again, Debz.
Anytime.
I have found this fascinating, and I've got 1,000 more questions.
Well, I tell you, if people want to experience a little taste of it, I'm having an event on Saturday, this Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be a channeling event with the star teachers, the beings that say they're us on that other frequency. But they'll have a little bit of that practice. They'll get a message from the beings for the world. And then they'll have that experience that I just talked about. And then we're going to open it up, and anybody who's attending live can ask questions, and they will answer, and they'll pull the information from the field.
Okay. So where do they have to go to
they can go to my website, which is debzshakti.com, or any of my social media platforms. I'm on all of them, and it's always Debz Shakti. So DEBZSHAKTI. There it is. Thank you. But and it's free, so they can come on and participate. If you can't participate, there'll be a recording posted to all those platforms too. But if you want a taste of what we've been talking about, come to that thing. You'll blow your mind.
And that's a good place for us to jump off here. So friends, please do this. Check out Debz. She's a wonderful person. So on behalf of Deb, myself, and Patricia Wilkinson behind the scenes, my program manager, I wish you a good night, and join us again next week. Thank you,
Jim and Patricia. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I was able to perceive things from a more global perspective. I felt nothing intimidating from any of these experiences, so I didn't have fear. For me, fear is a human response to danger, and I never felt in any danger.